Hey Hawks fans, sitting alongside former teammate, good friend Bradley Saw to talk about, I guess, such a really good era. It's been almost 10 years, Sewell's still got the same haircut, and looking forward to a good old chat and reminisce about some good old times.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, I haven't been here for 5 years, so...
It's probably been even longer for me.
Yeah.
It's, obviously very, very different feeling, but I mean, it's a real rabbit warren now. Walls have gone up in different rooms and meetings rooms, and the women's addition to the facilities.
Coaches down the other end, so a lot of it in here seems the same, apart from Dimmer's dirty locker. That's a disgrace. But yeah, it's the same homely feel as it used to be, apart from just a few little added parts.
1989 was the last time Hawthorn were actually at the MCG on Grand Final Day. That game that we've talked so much about. They feel like it's their destiny to win one of these. Will it be against a team that's taken all before them?
So we'll go into the Grand Final with some good form. I think our closest game in the previous four was about 40 points.
Yeah, I think that, for my recollection, that last half of the season, the penny dropped when we lost to Geelong. I think that was a moment for the group that we realised, and it probably hadn't dawned on us until then, but I think that was the moment we realised we can actually win this.
Oren Clarko came in and said, we can win the premiership.
And
we're like, hang on, we've just lost to Geelong, they've lost one game for the year.
And I reckon that was off the back of, Loz, you had a stinker.
Thanks, Brad.
You had a stinker. It was your fault we lost. Because I reckon Loz had just come from the hospital or something that week.
She was due that day.
That day,
and had it 2 days later, I think.
Yeah. So I think we were right in the game up until the last quarter, maybe, and then you butchered the last quarter, and we lost it because of the last quarter.
Yeah.
And then that
learn
week,
from your mistakes, they say.
and then that week in the review, Clarko kind of identifying a few reasons as to why we lost, and if that wasn't the case, then we actually would have beaten Geelong. And so I think that was the first moment that belief in the group was there, I think.
Yeah, because I think as a young group, we didn't really think about the Premier. We're just playing football. We came off 2007 where we'd had a good final, had our first final against Adelaide, lost to North when we were still on cloud nine, and it really dug deep. And the next year, we were just playing football. And then all of a sudden, so we got close to Geelong, and Clarko mentioned we could win the premiership, and then we thought, oh shit, maybe we could. And then the build up to the grand final was pretty smooth. Four games leading into it, and then grand final day, no one gave us a chance.
I think that's why it was so smooth and why it did feel easy, because there was no pressure, because Geelong had all the expectations were on them, and so for us we could kind of fly under the radar a little bit, and the expectation was on them.
Down, Hawthorn, the champions. The long wait for Crawford over. What a team on and off the field they've turned out to be.
We walked away thinking this is going to be us the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years. If we stuck together, what could it be? But what you don't realise as a young guy is how important moving on is. And I think that 2009 helped us after that, because we learned a big lesson. We had 15 or 16 operations post the grand final, which obviously didn't help, but when we came back, we're all that little bit, maybe say skin folds were a little bit higher. Time trials weren't as good, because when you go from having a bad loss against North Melbourne in the second final the year before, and every little bit counted, whether I ate that, whether I did that run, whether I did that extra gym session, because I want to come back to prove that we could get that next step. When we got back from 2008 or the off season, it was like whenever you caught up with friends, you would have a beer, or do you need to do that run? Oh, I'm feeling pretty good. I feel fit. I won't do that run, or the optional gym session on Boxing Day. Do you go and do it? Oh, no, I'll do that next week. So those little things, which didn't seem much at the time, but then when you get back and majority of the blokes on the list had that same mindset, all of a sudden you go, oh, hang on, we're a bit behind. Plus the injuries. And I think the game style we didn't evolve the game style. We thought because of the group we got and the game style we had, that we could just continue the same way. And we found out pretty quickly that wasn't the way you got to do it post-season.
I remember Jack coming back saying about the skin folds, and I don't know whether there's any truth to it or not, but it certainly stuck, that we had an equivalent of 100 kilograms of fat
Extra
extra
player.
across the group.
Yeah, it did.
And so that then takes a couple of extra weeks in pre-season to get back to the shape that you should have been when you first begun. And that kind of just compounds and accumulates through pre-season and then into the season, and you carry that kind of softer mindset into the year. And injuries were a big one as well.
Yeah, but I think that's where, as you go through your footy journey, you pick up little things and you learn. And that's where a lot of people that are out of the system quickly don't learn from mistakes, where even though it took us a long time to get back to where we wanted to be, I reckon a lot of the guys, especially the senior guys, realised that off-season, yes, you can go and celebrate for 2 weeks, but we almost had a crossroads day where a message would be sent out to all the players, not from the coaches, from players sent around to each other, just sort of saying it was 2 weeks post our last game, and it was for a crossroads day. You can either continue enjoying yourself, partying, having drinks and eating bad food, and do what happened in 2009, or you can make a decision and turn and start being a professional and prepare for the next year. And we learnt that from 2009, which we started to get better and better every year after that, because I guess it was the mindset and what we learnt from the off-season and the pre-season of 09.
Continues to run.
The way he's kicking tonight.
Yeah, it will be a kick perhaps right on the siren or after.
He can go the distance.
Will he want to freshen up here? This for the game then. Kicker's on the way. Siren's gone. They've done it again. They've done it again, the Cats.
It's amazing what you start to believe, because you've had a few close games, you've been up a few times. They had a few times where they came back and won with a kick after the siren. But it's amazing how what you read, you start to believe, and then all of a sudden we started to do more uncharacteristic things late in games, not taking the ball over, letting them play on, different stuff like that, which we'd been good at for most of those games. And then you start to believe the hype of what everyone's saying, that we can't do it and we will choke. And if you start to believe that, that's funnily enough what's going to happen. And it was it was Fags in that meeting, wasn't it? Before he came into the, and this is I reckon the first time I saw Fags get grumpy. I've seen it a lot since, but he's come in and he's like, "This is bullshit in the leadership meeting." And I'm really like, "Hang on, what's going on here? This is leading up to the prelim against Geelong." And he's like, "You guys are too respectful to Geelong. Listen to the comments that we say every time that we've lost to them. Oh, they were good, like in the media, they're a good team, we respect them, it's always close games. You always pay them respect. You respect them too much. This is why we're going to beat them. This is what we're good at. This is what I don't want you thinking." Yeah, so it was just a change of mindset for going, how good are Geelong? Geelong is so good, we've lost so many times, to hang on, we do this, and it was that belief from the meeting, from the leadership meeting into the team meeting, just sort of flowed through.
I think we got sucked into the narrative, and it wasn't until Fags sort of came in and basically said, "How can it be a good game when you continually keep losing? That's not a good game." And so I think just shifting the narrative internally was really important for us.
That was spoken about 3/4 time as well. We're down 20 points, and it was spoken about, let's not lay down. But actually have a fight against them. Don't give them what they want to give.
Yeah. And Kennett probably did us a favour. I mean, kind of coining it like that, creating this unbelievable rivalry, and it certainly wasn't the first or the last time Jeff said something inappropriate or otherwise that the club or the players or the coaching group felt the heat of. I think as a leadership group, we kind of just got to a point of kind of acknowledging, well, it's just Jeff. He's going to say these things from time to time. And just not let that impact what we're doing, and then that flowed on to Fags and his remarks, and then kind of just shifting the focus of the lens on the Kennett curse, I guess.
Campbell over the top, Bruce, well done, Rivers, Lewis, brilliantly, Gunston, Burgoyne to put them in front. He doesn't miss, he's kicked free. Hawthorn back in front.
Shawnee kicking the goal, a goal celebration against Geelong.
The arms out wide spread.
Yeah.
The fact that game was the end of the Kennett curse. It was...
Speak of the devil.
He just turned to Kennett. But that game there was huge, because once again, we finished up top of the ladder. 20 points down, 3/4 time. And with Geelong, we'd had that battle the whole time, that I reckon there was 5, 6, 7 games that were results under 2 goals. And they always got on top, whether it was, as we spoke about earlier, they were calmer under pressure. But then just for Shawnee to do what he does, for the boys not to give up in that last quarter and turn from a 20-point deficit 3/4 time to, I think it was a six point win. I think it showed a bit about the group and how far we'd come from the previous few years against a team that clearly had it over us.
And they're home all right. They've done it. What a team. That culture, the Bloods. That's what it's all about.
I think that 2012 was a build-up from the 2011 prelim as well. So we started to get touted as chokers. Post the 2012 grand final, 2011 Collingwood were up at 3/4 time when I think Bawley kicked the snap, Bud kicked his good goal, and then was it Swanning?
No,
We've tried to take it out of the memory, but we had the close loss to Collingwood in the prelim, and then to go through and be on top of the ladder. Everyone tipped us to win the grand final, but we just got out-scouted and outplayed. Their game style was better on the day than ours. Their senior players were a lot calmer in pressure situations, did the right things in pressure situations where we fell down. And we've talked about learning a lot over 7, 8, 9. 11 and 12 were two really big learning curves for us, because what we realised is in pressure situations you didn't have to be a hero. We had a term that we used to use: be reliable, don't be remarkable, and that counts for big game. That counts for senior players. That if you're reliable to your teammates, to every one of your teammates on the field, you don't need to panic. You don't need to do anything amazing. Cyril used to be able to do the amazing things, but everyone else just had to sit back and just be reliable to your teammate. And if you did that in big games, in tight games, in finals, in big finals, then more often than not you're going to come out on top, because of that's how finals are won.
Yeah, again, it's just the coachability of the group, and I think the relationship between the senior players and the coaching group, to be able to accept responsibility after 2011, the loss in the prelim, 2012, the loss of the grand final. And I don't think it's unfair to say that from that platform, I don't know that the club goes on to win 3 after losing 12. Such was the effect I think that it had on the group. And again, those compounding lessons that were learned, there's obviously much more that goes into it, but those compounding lessons were learned, I think were a huge catalyst, and one of the strengths of the group to continue to build on that.
Also, you sort of touched on the mindset to take responsibility. We had a meeting with Mooloolaba pre-season going into 213 where the leadership was announced, and Luke Loudon actually stood up. We sort of said, as you do every pre-season, from when we become sort of leaders, the coaches would set out the agenda, and this is what you should stand for. You've got to be selfless. You've got to do all these criteria, have all these criteria that you have to live by, and we just used to take them off the coaches and go from that. And as the leadership was announced in the pre-season at Mooloolaba in 213, we sort of went back and said we're going to be selfless, we're going to be team first, we're going to be honest, all the other stuff you list. And Luke Loudon hadn't played a game then, was in maybe second, third, fourth year, and he said, we've heard this before. And we're like, hang on, what? He goes, you guys stand up there and say that this is what we're going to stand for, and yes, you do, you stand for that, but then in big occasions you guys don't. You try and do too much. You don't do the easy stuff, the first give stuff that we talk about. In pressure situations, you guys don't do it. And at the time, it's like, hang on, what's he saying? But then you sit back and reflect, and a part of getting better as leaders is listening to teammates. And we sort of sat back and he's right. In pressure situations, we were trying too hard to be leaders. We were trying too hard to do the right thing. We were trying too hard to be remarkable and win the game, because you always hear it, that's what leaders do. Totally opposite. And what it took was a young kid who hadn't played a game to stand up and have the courage to stand up. And I think one good thing about our club was we were trying to tell young blokes, if you see something you don't like, raise your voice. And he did that, and we went back, and it was probably the best thing that's happened to us, because we were able to reflect, and from that meeting we come up with our own categories, our own structures, our own beliefs, a criteria that if you're going to play in the Hawthorn jumper, you had to live by these. And whether it was a pre-season game, whether it was a training session, if you didn't give, you get told about it. and that was the way we were. And funnily enough, you get to close games that we'd lost a lot of, and we were able to be calm, be reliable, do the things that Luke Loudon said we couldn't do in the past. And this is success, with a lot of other things, the success followed with it.
I think most importantly that created a new level of accountability.
Yep.
Whereby the leaders themselves maybe thought that they were separate from the rest of the group, and they were prepared to speak a certain language and espouse certain values that at times they weren't living or they weren't contributing to themselves. And so that put everybody on notice in a public forum, I think, and it probably shook a few of the leaders in particular as well, I think, to have been put on notice like that. But again, I think that's one of the pivotal moments that that then created what was to come over the next few years.
But you go back and look, and the mindset that the leaders, the senior guys had, you think you could see what they were thinking. They were thinking this is what they need to do, but when you break it down, footy is as easy or as hard as you make it, and because they were trying so hard to do the right thing, they were making football so much harder than what it really needed to be. Simplify things, make it easier, make these rules that are just anyone who plays in that team easier to follow. And if you follow them, you're going to be a good teammate, and more than likely, if you've got the right group of fellas with you, you're going to be successful.
Now he's hugging the pocket here, wanting Hodge to win a one-on-one against Schofield. Puopolo got a high tackle, back to Hodge. That's a goal, I think. It is. Hodge has done it from nowhere.
You're talking about on the way out, weren't you?
Yeah, I've got it saved on my phone. I'll show it all on the way out here. No, it was the ball switched around the other side, and not sure why, but I was in the forward line. Normally, the boys told me to get out, but I think it was a contest. Poppy gave back to me, and I remember there was a big focus. Not kicking to the top of the goal square, because West Coast were good with McGovern and all that. If you put it to the top of the goal square, they'll intercept mark, and then because the ball rotated round, they had open space out the other. So it was almost you're better off having a shot or doing something rather than just sitting it there for them to cherry pick and off they go. So did I think it was going to go through? No. Did I think if I missed, was I going to get dragged properly? But it's one of those ones where you sort of see it, and it's nice to be on practice down at Tassie in that pocket. Like every time we go to any ground, the day before we're sitting out there and we'll have bananas. So I've had 1,000, probably kicked about 3 over the years. Had a crack at it, went through, and the feeling to turn around and have the Hawthorn supporters right there. It's probably one of the more cherished photos that I've got. Just the fact that you've got this supporter base sitting behind them, the support they were able to give to us over the years, but to be able to do it right in front of them and have that photo to look back on is something that puts a smile on my face. I don't know what the celebration. I think it was just a fist, wasn't it? No, there's no chainsaw. Mate. No, maybe on the dance floor. No, there was. I can't remember it on that. Someone would have teased me long before now than that. No, I think it was just a turn around, and about as big as my celebration gets is probably just a fist and then a bit of a yell, and then off we go back in and go again.
Lewis to the advantage of Franklin. Players flooding back now inside the 50, but Franklin's running it. He puts it inside the 50, then spears it home.
It was great to watch his journey go through and how he matured, because it wouldn't have been easy for him. Like you go through and Melbourne is such a big football bubble, and we used to hear stories of he would have to go to the same cafe because. And the owner would put him around the corner because he couldn't go and have a coffee or breakfast without people going up to him. And for a bloke who's so shy and doesn't or didn't like the media attention, it would have been so tough. But when he got on the footy field, he was just a different bloke. It was a bloke who just loved the limelight, he knew that people were going there just to watch him. And I think that's what turned him on game day. And some of the things he could do, you'd sit back and go, who's 6'5", can pick the ball up at full speed and then run, take 4 or 5 bounces, look at the bloke behind him, almost giggle and kick it from 50. And he was doing that week away. I remember he kicked the goal, we had one from full back. I think Strado gave him the handball, he's hurdled Strado, kicked the goal, like just stuff like that, which if we could do that once in our career, you'd sit there and go, geez, I'll be happy with that. This fella did this every second week.
I mean, just athletically, he was from another planet. the way, I mean, I still remember some of the training sessions he was doing, the 150s and the time trials and the running, and the way it's just so fluid and just the way that he moves. But I mean, it's just like a big puppy, this big Doberman, because he didn't like the limelight, but he was a huge personality on the training track, and within the group.
That training crap.
Yeah, his training was crap. Yeah, he just loved games and was the first to poke fun at someone, poke fun at himself. Would be out there all day just playing with the ball around goals, snapping like you would a 7 or 8-year-old. And he just loved it.
He had his natural athletic ability. Not sure I'll probably use this, but there was pre-season times where he's a young guy, and he obviously, there's a few time trials that we rocked to. I remember there was one, he rocked up, and it was in the off season. We were allowed to come back for skin folds and time trials, and I think Bud may have went out the night before, and he'd had a few. So he rocked up, he was a little bit dusty.
You were probably with him, were you?
No, I went home way earlier than that. But the ability to where you could sort of see, it was a lot of blokes in the same state, but he went out there and ran the 2K and come second to Timmy Clark. And I think that showed that, yes, he had a natural ability, but his grit was to, because he knew that people were watching him, if he's going to rock up a little bit shabby, but he'd push through that. Mentally, he's just to see what he's been able to do in his career. I think you could sort of see from an early age that whether he was feeling good, whether he was feeling bad, mentally he had that part of him that if I've got to go now, I'll go. And you don't kick 1,000 goals and do what he's done in football.
You're right. I think that gets underplayed a bit because he is so talented and he is capable of doing some freakish things out there. But his competitiveness and as a player, what he would do during clutch moments, and he wanted the ball in his hands. He knew he was the one that could impact and kick that goal.
2011, we played Geelong in the first final. He got severe bone bruising in his knee. Shouldn't have got up. There's no way. Most other blokes wouldn't have got up. Played the next week, and I think kicked 3 or 4, had a good game. But from early in that week, we got the message as leaders that Bud's probably not going to play. He had, I think it was a knee-on-knee, severe, no chance. He got up. And I think he just continued to do stuff that not many other people would be able to do. Clearly he's done that considering what he's done in his career. But when you doubted him, that's when he'd probably shine the most because he'd want to prove people wrong.
Getting away from them. See a big torpedo coming from Guerra. Big play here. Stratton run down, but okay. Franklin with a hurdle, and then the long one. This will be something. It is.
It's like anything. People mature at different stages, and Bud took a couple of years to mature off field, but also on field. There's a few games where he was sent back to VFL. We had him playing half-back flank at one stage, just to sort of teach him the game. But you think in his third year he's kicked 60 or something, and then kicked 100 in his fourth. So any doubt that anyone ever had, it went quickly. Like you could always see the ability. It was just about when he was able to mature physically, mature mentally to put it together at AFL level. And tell you what, it came in pretty quickly, and that never left.
I mean, the three of them in particular, I think, were pretty happy to enjoy the trappings of young AFL stars. And the lifestyle probably wasn't conducive, for that. But I think the three of them, and they all learned pretty quickly what was and wasn't acceptable, and what was going to ensure long, successful careers. And it's phenomenal. I think he's still going.
By Dempsey as far as the Bombers were concerned after the initial effort from Hooker. But now they're in trouble. A hand pass from Slattery, or rather Hooley came unstuck. Rioli a little 1-2 and Bateman gets through and kicks a goal. Marvellous stuff.
Us watching him would sit back and go, that is unreal. Like, unbelievable what he could do. But for Cyril, it was just him playing football. It
was so instinctive. There was no thought to it. There was no kind of, in my mind, if I've got the ball on the boundary from 50, I'm thinking, I might have a shot at this. But for him,
first of all, you could make the distance from 50.
Well,
but
that's why it doesn't happen, right? That's why I'm thinking about it. Thinking, can I? Maybe I'll have a go. But he was just so instinctive. Everything he did around the ball, around the contest, around people going for a mark, there was no second guessing.
I reckon a lot of small forwards, when they do a U-turn, do a twist, their mindset is a selfish one of I want to kick the goal.
Yeah.
Like they get out of trouble because I want to kick the goal. I don't think that ever entered his mind. I don't think there's one part of Cyril that's a selfish footballer. Because anything he did, if there was someone there, he'd give it off. But the stuff that he was able to do was just a flick, a step, a tap, just because it just come second nature to him.
I think there are times where we had to ask him to become more selfish, to actually take a bit more responsibility and try and do a few more things as opposed to just, doing the simple things incredibly well. I remember meeting in the lecture theatre one of the reviews at some stage, and there was just a piece of vision of him doing something remarkable, and Clarko was actually trying to work out, Cyril, what are you thinking here? He's picked it up, done a blind turn and looked inside and dribbled a goal or something like that, and he goes, now what's your thought process here? How are you stepping through this? And Cyril kind of just nonchalantly goes, no, just doing my thing. And the whole room erupted, and Clarko's just standing going, well, what do you say? Fair enough.
I think everyone talks in 2008 about Stewie Jew 5 minutes, and what a 5 minutes it was, but I think the build up to that, which got everyone on edge and the supporters and the crowd up and about, was Cyril's tackle, where you kick it out there. He's an 18-year-old kid. He played every game this year, and yes, he had a bit of ability. He had a lot of ability, but the fact that he's been able to corral. He was outnumbered 1-3, get a pin holding the ball. We turn it over, a pretty important part of the game.
So little and so light.
Yeah, and once again, and he'd be sitting there going, oh, I just tackled. He wouldn't think any more of it, but everyone else sits back and go, we couldn't do that. Like they would flick it around, make us look silly, but his pressure, his intensity was able to get the free kick and off we went. But you come to expect that from him. Some of the things...
kind of did, didn't you?
Like I don't know if I've ever seen someone have a 10-12 possession game consistently, but always be in the best players.
So
because
impactful.
He might have only had 2 or 3 goals, but he'd set up a couple, but he'd had 2 or 3 chase down tackles, he'd had intercepts. The perceived pressure that he had, whenever we had intra-club games out here and you weren't on Cyril's team and you had the ball in the back line, you were getting rid of it, because if you had it for any longer than 3 seconds, 2 or 3 seconds, he was around somewhere and he was going to get you. But that was... I feared that out here, let alone playing a game or an MCG. And you know what we've seen firsthand what he's been able to do with pressure-wise at the MCG and Grand Final day.
The winner of the Norm Smith Medal is Brian Lake.
My first encounter of Lakey, apart from obviously you play against him and all that, but as captain, I was driving with my wife and my 2 boys at the time, and we pulled up at Office Works. It was a Sunday morning, it was a weekend of Portsea Polo, and we pulled up. It was about 10 o'clock. It was just as they were opening, and then on the screen in the car it came up with Brian Lake, and I just sat there and looked at it, and my wife's like, "Aren't you going to answer it?" I'm like, "No," because I knew if Lake is calling on a Sunday morning, it can't be good. I ended up calling him back, and the Portsea Polo issue that was happening, he filled us in, but that was my first real thing of Lakey's going to be good for us, but can we control and can he mould into what we want to produce here? And fast forward through the first year in 2013, and we're playing, obviously everyone talked about the Clarko Classic, we all squeeze up, it was an 18-man defence. For most of that time, we were playing 17-man defence, because we would squeeze up and there's a gap over here and we'd turn it. Lakey's back 50 metres back, nowhere near his opponent, just doing his own thing, just standing back there. Yeah. So it took a long time for us to get Lakey to sort of understand the way we wanted to play as a side. But one thing you did know with him, that in a big game, he'd back himself. And that's what you need. You need blokes who aren't going to shy away from the limelight in finals. You want someone who's going to, if they're going to make a mistake, move on and back yourself the next time. And without him in 13, when Freo would continue to come at us, we swapped from Lakey being the spare to, we swapped from Gibbo being the spare to going to Pavlich, and Lakey went spare, and he took 6 or 7 marks, intercept marks in that last quarter. And you sort of sit back and go, for all the stuff, for all the head slapping stuff that he put us through that year, and the frustration of working with him, getting to know, it paid off. Because of what he was able to do that in that game. But as far as a teammate, I don't think I've come to a footy club and laughed so much at one person. Laugh with him is
he's not trying to be funny though.
No. He having a locker just there.
Yeah.
I got way too close to him so many times. But you walk away shaking head, but just laughing because he's just an energetic. And then the Gatorade one just flows into put down a list of 100 people who would do that. I don't reckon I'd fill 100 people list, but I know who I'd have at number one. The bloke sitting in that car with his kids. But that's just the love and life, energetic person he is.
Well, my first image or encounter with him, after if you didn't know where he was at training, after training or anywhere in the club, you could always find him in that end room, just down there lying on a couch, just on his phone. And so I think he'd just walk off the track almost, take his boots off and just sit on the couch. He'd be on his phone. He'd almost take his lunch down there. That was his own little room. I don't know, from my memory, we went through a period where we tried to create the same type of person within the club. I think it was the likes of Luke Loudon and Strats in particular, who were just cut from a different cloth and both very comfortable in their own skin. And so that was I think a moment for the group that there was a strength in that, and that kind of needed to be embraced, and that needed...
It was almost celebrated, wasn't it?
Yeah, that needed to be kind of celebrated and allowed.
If you feel comfortable here being yourself, then you're going to be more comfortable in the place. You're going to be more comfortable out in the football field. So it was changed that let's celebrate people from all walks of life, whatever their background was.
If Strats wants to be a DJ and come in and play tunes during weights, well then let's do it. Let's get behind him and let's get around it and have some fun.
My first 5, 6, 7 years, I couldn't picture walking in with a DJ just sitting there slamming out, but it was almost that. And then that would turn into basketball, it was a freedom. You come out here and you didn't have to be someone you weren't.
There's a big cultural shift. There's a big change within the group, within the dynamic. I think it came off the back of those guys in particular, but then to be able to embrace different personalities like Gibbo and like Bud and like Clinton Young and all these types of guys, like a Brian Lake, who you put them all in a room now, and footy is the only common thread. You take that away and you'd have 40 mutes sitting in a room with nothing really in common, I'd imagine. But that was that's the ambition for any successful club or team, I think, to find that common thread and then to everybody to moving in the same direction. And for that period of time, we're as good as anybody in doing that.
This is team football of the highest quality. The three-quarter time siren. Lap it up, West Coast fans.
They've dismembered the Hawks tonight.
I find that whenever a team is at the top for a long time, everyone wants to be the first one to say they're done. And if they go on to win again, of course they did. They're the best team. But everyone wants to try and either it's a good player or a good team. They want to call it before it's done, just so they can be the first one to say it. And we had a few things. We had leading to the finals, I got done drink driving. We were sort of inconsistent throughout the year as well. We got to about round 8, I think we were 4-4, and it wasn't smooth sailing. So we snuck in 4th position, and then we went across to West Coast in the first final, and it just wasn't Hawthorn like the way we played football. I know that I came back from suspension, and then the drink driving and Clarko put me on the back flank because he reckons I was going to try and do something stupid in the middle and try and make up for the last couple of weeks, but. It was the whole team. I think the only come to mind, I think Sam and Sean, Sam and maybe Cyril were the only two that sort of come out of the game going, well, they had a fair impact. Everyone else, Mark Robinson wrote an article saying that Hodge wasn't himself. I think we played Chip Frawley up forward because they reckon we couldn't put Lake in and Frawley in the back line together because they're two similar players. Went through about Haley, and they just went through 3/4 of our team picking away why we were done and why we were no good. But it's like, when people write stuff and people have a go at you, motivation's a huge thing in football. And I saw the article, and before the next week, I'd read it before the game against Adelaide, and then read it before the game against Freo when we got over the line. And I sent it to Clarko a couple of days before grand final, and just sort of said, mate, this has given me pretty good motivation for the games. It's amazing what you can do. If someone has a go at your ego and someone has a go at your pride, what can do. And Clarko sort of printed it out and gave it to everyone, and it was small little things can give motivation. Clarko's probably one of the best at getting blokes to feel wound up before a game. He has little stories, he knows how to hit a nerve, and articles that were writing us off after what we'd achieved definitely hit a nerve with us. In 2013 it was just relief because we had the years where we were getting touted as chokers. 2014 was the first time where we understood what we were about to achieve, because we went out to Damien Munker's farm and Clarko got a video from Jason Dunstall, and he went through and said the 88-89 Hawthorn back-to-back, if you guys are able to get back-to-back in today's day, in today's era, it'll be the greatest feat of the Hawthorn Football Club, because back then there was only 14 teams or wherever it was. He goes, you guys are doing it now with 18 teams, equalisation, draft picks, everything. You're supposed to win one every 18 years, so for you guys to win back-to-back will be the greatest feat of the football club. And to sort of sit back and hear someone who everyone respected from Bung saying that, you sort of sit back and go, this is something that we can build towards.
That was part of the beauty of Clarko and what made or makes him so good. I felt like they were incredibly siloed. So each year was a different chapter and had its own pivotal moment or pivotal stories. And so for 13, that was just complete relief. Not to say that I didn't enjoy 13, but
stressful.
But by comparison to 8, and I'd imagine the others as well, it wasn't. It was a relief more than a successful, exuberant feeling. It was just, whoa, thank goodness for that. Like the shadow of 2012 was large and heavy, and so then I think we probably carried part of that shadow, from the 2013 victory as well, knowing how horrible that felt, and then seeing on the horizon there's this pretty unique opportunity to go, back to back. And then what happened was 14 Clarko's illness.
Yep.
So for that to have occurred in the middle of the year, Clarko's illness, Bolt's coming in and coaching for 6 weeks, I think. 5 weeks. That shifted everyone's perspective as well, in terms of footy isn't everything. The senior coach has gone down with pretty serious illness, and to hear that different voice, I think, for effectively almost that 2-month period in the middle of the year was really refreshing and huge for the group. And then for Clarko then to step back in, and I think that shifting ground just kept everyone on edge a little bit. And then obviously it played out that year, and then
it was also the resilience that the group had built up, because it wasn't only Clarko going down. We had Gibbo tore his pec at Sydney round 8, I think, and missed 7 or 8 weeks. Mitch had calf issues and missed a lot of football that year too. Cyril with his hamstring. I think Lakey had calf as well. So we had a patch of football at the same stage where Clarko had Guillain-Barré disease and missed. We had a lot of senior players. And when Bolts came in, we almost took as a leadership group to talk to the younger players as well, as we don't need any heroes. So with so many senior important guys out, we need blokes to come in and play a role. And that's where the mindset changed of this is a team, and that's one thing we learnt from 2014 is how important the whole group is, how important the whole team is. Because if we didn't have blokes who could come in and play their role, and you feel for them, because as soon as the senior blokes come back, you know that they were going to take their spot back. But that's what they were willing to do. They were willing to step in for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, do what they had to do to make sure that we didn't drop down too far. So at the end of 14, that's what gave us so much belief in 15, is the fact that we lived through a terrible year with illness, with injury, coaches leaving after 14, and we're still able to bounce back and win the flag. So it gave us a lot of confidence with our back against the wall, people writing us off, that what we've been through in the past gave us confidence that we could win 15, even though our first final was pretty embarrassing over in Perth. But we were full of confidence with the group that we had that we could bounce back.